Government regulators.
Regulators have a high level of power over the completion of any deal, but likely have low interest in all but a minority of announced combinations. One way to strengthen regulatory resistance is to announce a deal as a fait accompli before or during the regulatory review process. The focus for this stakeholder group thus involves meeting conditions established by policymakers. Because regulatory requirements vary across the Table 3.1. Prioritizing M&A stakeholders. Nations comprising the European Union, 54. The discussion here is limited to the review under the Hart-Scott-Rodino, HSR, Antitrust Improvements Act of 1976. This U.S. law requires that before most M&A transactions can complete, filings describing the proposed transaction and the firms involved must be submitted to the Federal Trade Commission and the Department of Justice. The rules, filing requirements, and associated fees are fairly complicated, and interested readers can learn more at the Federal Trade Commission's website. 55 After filing for HSR review, there is generally a 30-day waiting period to allow regulators to review information and consider anti-competitive implications. During the waiting period, there are limits on data sharing and joint decision-making between firms that are part of the acquisition. The regulatory review may be shortened or extended, but it must be satisfied before a transaction can close. Although most firms wait until the review is complete, firms can begin planning for integration sooner. One option is to use third parties, such as consulting firms, to perform needed analysis of joint data and provide relevant summaries. 56 In doing so, companies need to ensure that incentives paid to advisors do not lead to higher costs. 57 Regulatory reviews by other government bodies may also be required before an acquisition can complete. For example, the European Union can impact acquisitions of U.S. companies, as illustrated by Intel having to make concessions to gain regulatory approval of its McAfee acquisition. 58 The potential for additional regulatory reviews reinforces the need to consider regulatory issues and remedies as part of target selection, as any accommodations to gain regulatory approval will influence integration implementation. By anticipating regulatory reviews, firms can minimize planning delays. Firms with active acquisition programs or strategically important deals may want to establish a team dedicated to government relations or liaison with regulatory agencies. For example, AT&T has announced it will make concessions to regulators to complete an acquisition of T-Mobile. AT&T has a skilled team of 93 lobbyists in Washington, D.C., and has spent $46 million in campaign contributions to both major U.S. political parties. 59 The primary focus of successful acquirers during regulatory review is continuing integration planning while keeping government representatives informed and regulatory requirements satisfied.